And now I'll continue the story I started before. My shoulder aches, and I'm exhausted. I haven't slept well for days, but the cold water in the river is keeping me awake against my will. She's not the same mad beast she was in the arena anymore. Her face is strangely calm, a calmness that's literally frightening. Of course, I had to know everything, so I looked at her and said, "What exactly are you?" "The Emperor has lions, tigers, and bears, but he was obsessed with you." "Why?" She looked at me with her golden eyes that gleamed in the darkness and began to tell me the whole truth. As I listened, my mind raced back to the cursed palace. She said, "This isn't a story about animals, it's a story of greed." Then she told me what happened 8 months ago. In my imagination, I saw the throne room, shadows moving on the walls from the torchlight. I saw the desert sorcerers and the office rats, dressed in black robes, standing before the emperor. They brought him rotten papers and old drawings from 1,000 years ago that spoke about her kind, and they told him that these legends were not myths, that the golden devils of the south were real. When the emperor saw the papers, he was not afraid. No, his eyes sparkled with envy, and he wanted to remain the only one who possessed the legend. She told me that he took 500,000 soldiers to the Deadlands, 500,000 of the best men in the army under a merciless sun, and all this for the sake of hunting her. But this was not a war. No, this was a massacre. She stood alone before an entire army, and they did not beat her with swords. No, they beat her with corpses. She killed 50 at first, then 100, and the bodies piled up around her. But the emperor did not stop. He kept sending his men to die one by one. They buried her under the weight of the dead, strangled her, threw nets over her one after another, drove arrows into her, and poisoned her until she could no longer hear. This was a deal, and the price for her captivity was paid in the blood of his army. When she fell before him, paralyzed and silent, he smiled with his characteristic coldness, returned her in chains, and made her his beast. The river fell silent, and the world grew still. Suddenly, she stood up, her nostrils flaring as she sniffed the air. She pointed toward the darkness and said in her strange voice, "Merchants." Her voice was sharp, like a knife. "I smell them in the air. They're heading south, toward the salt ports." Dawn was breaking at the palace. The emperor stood on his balcony, his eyes fixed on the road. Behind him, a masked man suddenly appeared. He did not speak, he communicated with the emperor in some other way. The emperor turned toward him and handed him the iron ring he had broken in the arena. In a cold voice, he said, "Bring them to me alive, all 3 of them. I want the girl to see me skinning her father alive." The masked man lifted the broken ring to his nostrils and inhaled deeply so he could pinpoint their location, like a hunting dog. The hunter had already caught their scent, and the road stretched before him. It was still a long way, and the salty heat was relentless. The sun was not on our side, it was our second enemy. Every step under that fire made my shoulder wound burn with pain. I stumbled as I walked, clutching the bandage soaked with sweat. Of course, she could endure it better than I could because her body was far stronger. I am just an ordinary human, I can't withstand all this. Unfortunately, we couldn't stop. Suddenly, she froze. She didn't look at anything, but she inhaled deeply. The air carried a stench worse than the heat. We left the path and entered a rocky area. There, we found a man lying dead in a pit. From his condition, I understood he had been a prisoner, taken for profit. When he died, his body was discarded like garbage, not like a human being. I pushed aside the cloth on his arm and discovered the same mark as the black snake. His skin was burned. At that moment, my blood ran cold despite the blazing sun. I said to myself, "That's it. They have my daughter. With these butchers, if I fell or got tired, they'd do to me what they did to him, leave me for the vultures." The pain in my shoulder vanished. The exhaustion disappeared. I felt nothing but fear, and that fear made me run. The ground changed. The red dust disappeared, and we entered the white hell, the magic of salt. There was no water, no shade, only an endless mirror that burned my eyes and cracked my skin. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. I weakened, The wound throbbed with heat, and the salt pierced the cuts like needles. My breath grew heavy, the dry air stung my throat. But she did not stop. Her legs were trained for hunting, leaving no trace behind. She walked ahead, setting the pace, preventing me from collapsing face first into the ground. Suddenly, she stopped again. She wasn't looking forward, her ears moved as if searching for a sound I couldn't hear. Her nostrils flared. She moved quickly. I asked her in a voice dry with thirst, "What is it?" Her eyes widened with fear. "Something is coming toward us." I looked behind me toward the empty horizon. At first, I saw nothing. The mirage above the white salt distorted everything. Then I saw it, a tiny black, like a drop of ink on white paper. "It's a patrol," I told myself, trying to believe it. "They need to rest." But she shook her head. Her golden eyes narrowed. "This isn't a patrol. Patrols stop to drink. This one hasn't stopped since we left the river. And it's moving incredibly fast." A chill ran down my spine despite the sun. This isn't an army. It's one man and a sleepless hunting dog. We're not walking anymore, we're running to survive. And fear is chasing us. My thoughts turned to my daughter. The merchants were calm as they reached the edge of the salt lands, where the earth turned to bone and ash, where Roman law meant nothing. I imagined her behind the bars of a cage, her face covered in dust, exhausted, staring at the settlement with pure fear. The merchant stopped the cart and dragged her to the center of the arena before a fire. The buyer waited, not noble or rich, but a cannibal chieftain sitting on a throne of bone. He touched her face with fingers blackened by ash. He was not looking for beauty. He was looking for purity. He paid in bags of salt. The deal was done. They tied her to a ritual pillar. Drums began to pound. They whipped human skins. They wanted her blood for their hungry gods before the moon rose. We returned to the white salt. The sun was setting, turning everything blue. The air grew freezing cold, but we couldn't stop. If we did, the hunter would catch us. And if we stopped, my daughter would die. In the distance, I saw a faint, sickly light. The hunter had lit his beacon. He was very close. "We won't make it," she said. "He'll catch us before dawn." The salt beneath us was cracked into sharp valleys. "Then we stop running," I said. "We disappear." We descended into the crevices of the salt flats. The water below was black and razor-sharp. One mistake meant instant death. But it was the only place where our trail could vanish. We crawled through darkness illuminated by the hunter's distant light. The world below was narrow, sharp, suffocating. Crystal edges tore at our clothes and skin. We pressed ourselves against the walls as boots stamped above us. The dog stood right overhead, sniffing. She placed her palm on the wall and whispered, "The salt confuses the desert. Down here, we are ghosts." The shadow circled but finally moved away. We crawled southward, every meter agony. Salt burned in my wounds like molten fire. But the pain kept me awake. It reminded me why I was bleeding. I imagined the village. The leader raised a knife above my daughter. They painted white lines on her body. The moon climbed higher. We reached the end of the crevice. The village was only 300 paces away. But the land between us and it was exposed. "If we go now, he'll see us," I said. She nodded. "Let him see us." We ran toward the fire, screaming. He saw us. He turned with inhuman speed and chased. We did not enter like thieves. We entered like a storm. She roared, shaking hearts. Claws and fangs tore through the savages. I saw only the knife. I struck the leader with all my strength. The bone broke. I seized the black stone knife and drove it into his heart. It was his blood, not hers. I cut her bonds and held her. She trembled, speechless with terror. But there was no time. The village surrounded us with spears. Then the hunter arrived. He attacked without distinction, prey or enemy. His black chains whistled through the air. He tore through men like straw dolls. Horses, she cried. We mounted and fled. Later, in a broken valley, we collapsed. I told my daughter, it's over. You're safe. But she saw him coming. He had adapted. He rode the dead leader's armored beast. Faster. Stronger. The hunt was not over. We entered an ancient tomb valley carved with statues of lions and warriors. This was not a lair. It was a forgotten civilization erased by the Emperor. She stood tall among the ruins. Not a monster, but a queen. We won't run anymore, she said. We prepared an ambush. The hunter entered. A pillar fell. Dust filled the air. But he leaped free. The battle was brutal. He broke my leg with his chain. I saw his face, a human with his tongue cut out, marked as a slave. It was the Titan. The old arena champion. My daughter struck him in the eye with a stone. I wrapped his chain around his neck. Finally, he fell. The dog died. My leg was shattered. She reset the bone. The pain was worse than torture. We found a sealed message on him, erased him from history. The Emperor feared her. We hung the Titan's body at the border as a warning. Years passed. The Emperor received a wooden box containing his broken mask. He erased the southern roads from his maps. He built a wall of silence. Now I sit in the ruins, my leg aching, my daughter sharpening her spear beside me. The Empire is great. But here, they will not find prey. They will find lions. And that is where our story ends for today. Stay tuned for new videos and summaries. Peace.